Fishing bros and broettes, welcome to the garage and welcome to another edition of Garage Talk. So stupid. Fishing bros and broettes, welcome to the garage and welcome to another edition of Garage Talk. I got a fun short video for you. I've been getting a lot of questions about where do bass go after they spawn? Like, what are 3 different places that you look for on a lake, a river, an impoundment, just wherever you fish to find fish once they get done spawning? Because sometimes they get a little weird and they get a little hard to catch. So I'm going to tell you in this video 3 spots that I like to check on the lake for fish when they're all done spawning. And the very first one is probably the easiest one, right next to where they spawned. So I'm looking for flats, like these long extending points that are pretty flat on the top, or large expensive grass flats near where they spawned. Maybe it's a little ways out, maybe a foot, 2 foot deeper, but basically not too far from where these fish, you saw them on beds, where you see the little kind of fanned out spots on the bottom, where they were spawning. Or maybe you're seeing a bunch of fry, like those little minnows, those are the little baby bass swimming around. They don't go that far because, one, they don't want to move a whole bunch. They've used a lot of energy to spawn. And then the other thing that a lot of you guys probably already know is some of the other forage spawn after, during, or around when the bass are spawning. So you have the shad spawn. You'll have brim that go and spawn on these flats, oftentimes very near to some of the bass beds because they use some of the same types of areas, whether it's hard bottom or holes in the grass, maybe some gravel. So those fish don't have to go very far to actually find bait and kind of feed up for that summertime or that post-spawn period. And oftentimes a lot of that bait and a lot of that forage is coming to them because it's right in that area where they spawn. So one of my prime go-tos is to look right near where the bass spawned. I might look a couple feet deeper, maybe a little ways out. Say you're in a creek, bass spawn at the back of the creek or the back of the pocket. I'll go to those first couple points just out from there. Just a little ways out. They've shifted, got a little bit deeper, got comfortable, but didn't go very far. That's one of the most prime spots to look for them. And keep an eye on that brim spawn. It's sneaky and can be absolutely awesome because they spawn right where the bass were and the bass hang around and they crush them, dude. The other place I like to look is sort of cover. That sort of late spring, early summer time of year is one of the best times of year to flip. And you guys know how much I love fishing heavy cover. A lot of that new grass has come up, docks, tree falls. They're sort of like mid-depth cover. A lot of these things will maybe stick out into the lake. A dock, for instance, that goes out into 6 to 8 foot or something, 6 to 10 feet. Same with maybe a tree fall. You got a tree that laid down and a bass maybe spawned right up on the limbs and 2 foot of water, 1.5 foot of water. Now they sort of move down that tree that's laying in the water and they're relating to a little bit deeper water, but still using that tree as an ambush point for maybe brim, bluegills, shad, bait, frogs, all those kinds of things that are sort of living in that cover. Because the one trick about cover is it provides cover for not only bass, but a lot of the things that bass like to eat. And a lot of the things that bass like to eat, things like to eat. So for instance, a lot of the bugs will be on there. The frogs eat the bugs, and thus the bass eat the frogs. It's sort of the circle of life, Lion King style, right? So that cover, grass being the same, lily pads pop up, some of that heavier grass stands, some of the early milfoil that comes up. All these things are in that range where it's near to where the bass have spawned in that shallow water. It's fresh and coming up, and it's a great sort of moving out point. It provides sort of a step back point as those fish move to deep water throughout the summer. So it's a very easy place to target because you're the bass spawned right there, and there's a piece of wood that sticks out a little ways out. Go fish that. Docks are also pretty sneaky because you can really target, you'll have 100 docks in a pocket, but you can really target the docks that are kind of on the way out of that pocket because they're using those as sort of stepping points as they move out to the main lake and to those summer hideouts. So look for cover, whether it's grass, docks, wood, anything that provides shade or provides a place for other sort of living organisms to live that those bass and the forage will actually eat, and it creates that whole circle of life. One of the last ones is my favorite. I love flipping, no doubt about it, but the last one, you'd be amazed how quick fish get offshore and get deep. So one of the first places I look, even when the water temp is still pretty cool and even when I'm still seeing fish on beds, because not all fish do stuff at the same time. You'll have fish still spawning in May, April, June, even sometimes early July. It's crazy, but they'll still be spawning. But guess where some of those fish will also be? Out in 20, 30, 25, 15 foot of water. There are groups of fish, oftentimes they're hard to find because there's less of them, but there are groups of fish that literally go from 1 foot of water and spawning out to 20 foot of water within a day, within 24 hours. They'll move straight out to some of those offshore haunts. What are those offshore haunts? They can still be like a dock or some kind of cover, but maybe it extends out into 25, 30 feet of water. Those fish will suspend on it. Some of my favorites, though, are looking at maybe like ledges, hard spots, creek channel turns, anything that provides like a little bit of a change of structure for those fish. My prime targets for those early offshore fish, really in like greenish kind of semi-stained to clear water, is probably like 10 to say 20 foot. Usually you kind of get those early groups, they won't move super way out just because the pressure and the way their bodies are set up, it takes them a little while to gradually move out and adapt to those deeper water conditions. But frankly, there's some fish that will move straight out and do so quickly. So looking at maybe like a creek channel turn that's near a spawning flat, looking at some main river ledge hard spots that are in front of like a giant pocket or a giant bay, because those fish are filtering out, and some of the earliest fish to spawn are the earliest fish to get out on some of that deep structure, and they're using that bay or that creek as sort of a highway to move towards those offshore structures, those offshore hunts for summer bass. The other thing that I like to look for is hard spots. So basically, a lot of times bass will spawn even on like soft bottom stuff that they'll fan off. In Florida, a lot of times they'll spawn on, say, lily pads, and they'll use the lily pad stems as like a hard spot to actually lay their eggs. Well, a lot of times these mud flats or these muckier style flats, they'll extend out to 6, 8, 10 foot of water. But one little sneaky thing you can do is using your sonar, you can actually find hard spots among these flats that are in like 10, 15, 20, whether it's a little like gravel bar, maybe it's a shell bar, oftentimes we see on the Tennessee River, and those hard spots will show up as lighter spots on your sonar or on your side scan, and that's how you can identify them, or you'll get like a double sound on your 2D. But bass tend to gravitate towards those hard spots, and they'll use them as little staging points. Once again, stair steps. It's not cover, it's structure, but it's a stair step on their way out to their summer haunts. And that can be one of the really sneaky ways to catch them, because you can find a school of fish that had spawned, they moved out as a group, and they're sitting on that hard spot, and then they'll be headed out. One thing you always want to keep in mind too, whether you're looking at cover, shallow, these shallow flats, or even offshore structure, is a lot of times the females are the first fish to move out. They're the biggest, but they're also the moodiest because they've been doing their spawn thing for so long. So you want to think about the quality of fish you're catching, especially when it comes to those offshore fish. If I'm catching a lot of little guys, I know I'm not in the right spot. It means a big group of males moved out pretty quick, and I'm not looking at the right school of fish. The same thing applies to cover. If I'm catching a lot of smaller fish in, say, an extensive grassland that runs for a while, maybe I'll look at more isolated clumps, something that one big female fish could use, or an isolated tree fall, something that's alone instead of a bank that has like 45 different like trees laying on the ground. Same thing applies for like docks. Looking for that isolated type structure and targeting that to try to get a bigger bite. Because really, sometimes the fish are skinny this time of year because they're post-spawn, but really this is a great time to catch some big fish, and some big fish that are grouped up, because they're looking to eat, they're looking to re-up before they go offshore and get in those summer kind of places and those summer style patterns. But before they do that, they got to eat a PBJ in the form of a giant brim or like some shad, and sort of re-up on that energy before they can kind of make that transition out to summer. So I hope this helps you out. Try those 3 different spots. Literally, that's exactly what I'm going to look for tomorrow. I'm going to look for offshore fish. I'm going to look for fish on shallow kind of points that are flatter with some grass or cover on them. And then hopefully I can get out that flipping stick and go and flip some maybe shallow tree falls, mid-depth tree falls, as well as skip a few docks to pick up a few big ones. Try it out. Let me know how it goes. Hit that like and subscribe button. If you got anything to add, go ahead and drop it down in the comments box. We will see you back from the garage or out on the water talking fishing. Daps, boys.